Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
Hey, it's me, Egbert. E-G-G-B-U-R-T. Check out my website at egbert.com. Now it's back to those two dudes who told me they would bring in big ratings. They better are their history. Here are Brad and John.
For those of you listening on the podcast, I just want you to know that I never make any mistakes. I run a flawless show every day.
You just go out and you seek more. Who doesn't want to seek a few more racks, Brad?
Right. I just knock it out of the park every day. Okay. When I was running a talk format with Brian Nieves in the morning, I had a talk show host on. This is going back to the old Mouth days, which is KWMO, which is now Crap, K-R-A-P. And the guy who was on in the morning was Neal Bortz. Do you remember Neal Bortz by any chance?
Oh, yeah, I do. Whatever happened to him?
Well, it's sort of a sad story. His producer, who he was very friendly with, a guy by the name of Royal, who they talked to all the time on the air, and Royal was an incredible guy, and they would kid back and forth with him. And Royal had a heart attack one night and died, and Royal was only like 42 or 43.
Oh, man.
And that sort of put Neal into a situation where his wife said, I don't want you to die working in the radio business. So she, at one point in time, she said to him, enough is enough. You retire. So his wife, and he talked about this all the time, his wife put him into a forced retirement where he retired from the radio business. And he was so good. He was interesting guy, that he had interesting past. At one point in time, he'd gone back to law school, and not as a young man, as an older man, and had his own long practice, and got into the radio business, and was just really funny. And what was interesting was he had all these different initials and acronyms and names for people, and he would tell you, if you don't know what we're talking about, go to my website, nealbortz.com, and he has a glossary of terms there. So you could could go to his website, and he used to always, one of his favorite ones was, when I first heard this, he'd always, like, if he got like in a heated argument with someone on the phone or something like that, he sometimes would, when he would say goodbye to them, he'd say AMF. You know what AMF stood for?
Adios, mother effer.
Yes, exactly. So you and I need to come up with, because you come up with these, you have all these crazy politically correct terms that you spout out that these people come up with. I'm going like, do these people sit around at night thinking of these goofy names?
They absolutely do. And just think, Brad, there is an entire multi-billion-dollar industry of folks, for example, in HR departments at large corporations, small corporations, that just sit around and think, okay, last year's DEI training, we were able to talk about, we use these pronouns, but we got to add Z and Zim this year, and they got to charge a little bit more for next year's program. So they just think about how do we evolve this victimhood narrative?
Well, it's just like, for example, this morning on another radio station, I heard a national leader who is a black person refer to the fact that people of color are still not treated properly, but yet we have a situation, and he said people of color, where we had a situation here in St. Louis where a anchor said colored people. Wasn't that what he said?
Yeah.
And
colored.
So in other words, so why is it you can say people of color, but you can't say colored people? I mean, explain that one to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Isn't it the same
here's
thing?
The thing. It's just it's entirely subjective, of course. But it's like anything, Brad. It depends on the beauty of it is people want to read intent, and we all believe that we're mind readers. So when I, before a break, sing Turning Japanese, if you don't like me, you're going to be like, oh, he's culturally appropriating and he doesn't like the Japs. Whereas maybe I just like the song.
Well, by the way, here's the thing for you. Do you know who that was by?
I don't remember who.
The Vapors. See, that shows you what a nerd.
See, I wouldn't have picked that out of a multiple choice.
What a nerd I am. Okay. So, I see. And to the point where what's interesting about this is, did you see I didn't watch this on TV because, quite honestly, I don't have a TV, but that's a whole other story. I watch everything online, and I watched the very first, the reincarnation of the Jon Stewart show. What is it called? Nightly show, or what's this show called? The Jon Stewart show.
I don't know. I don't watch it.
Well, he retired from it. He came back, and his first night he gave a equal skewering of both Trump and Biden, and it was pretty funny. He just really, once again, he was an equal opportunity offender, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I like that, because of the fact that
now, hold on, let me interrupt though, Brad. He wouldn't levy that same kind of joke, I don't think, at Kamala Harris. You can make fun of Trump and Biden because they're both old white men, but you wouldn't hear him come out and make fun of Kamala Harris or make fun of a member of the squad.
Well, I don't know. Hey, let's move on. I want to finish up on Japan, and then we've got to talk about the speech last night. Okay, Japan, and I follow this. I think this is fascinating because the same thing's happening to the United States. Japan has a problem. Japan has a problem that there are no young people. There's very few young people in Japan. The birth rate, they are into a negative birth rate, which has accelerated over the last several years. And even to the point, one of the experts I heard the other day talking about this said that Japan has maybe 6 to 8 years to turn this around. And if not, the country is doomed. Now, what we're talking about is the fact that for any population to essentially maintain its level, I think the number is when, for each married couple, you have to have like 2.2 kids. Isn't that like the number or something like that?
It's something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're in the same problem in China. China's in a negative spin as well, too. China used to be the most populous country in the world. Now they're not. They're number 2 behind India. Okay.
So why is this happening, Brad? Do you have a theory on this?
Well,
I've heard a number of theories.
Well, they give all sorts of crazy, not necessarily theories. They give what they say are facts about this. One of them is the fact that young people do not want to get married anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
Young people just do not want to get married anymore. They don't want to have kids. And once again, I talked about this, and I know I probably, raised the hair in the back of, on some people's heads, because it's the cultural, it's the transsexual, alternative sexual, thing, because transsexuals, let's be honest, I don't care what the experts say. If you're a dude and you switch over to a dudette, you can't have kids.
Yeah, that is it. Now, so first of all, agree with you. However, as a right-wing guy, I don't think that is, as much as I can't stand that phenomenon or think it doesn't apply to me, I don't think that's the major factor, Brad. I think it's a lot of it as young men in Japan and in China find that all of their needs for love and approval are met from things other than women, Brad. So you can get all the love and affirmation you need if you're, if you're really good at gaming, if you're really good at fill in the blank. And let's face it, this is uncomfortable for people to talk about. But in a culture in which we're told, hey, boy, you ain't nothing, and girls rule the world, you might look at all the girl power stuff and be like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I want to be in a relationship with somebody that's, a bra burner. And then also, and here's the really uncomfortable part, for men, if you have, you're a young man, you're starting to feel things, you could get that satiated electronically. You know what I'm saying?
Well, okay, let me take it one step further. Now, I know you don't totally agree with what I said, but take it to the situation with K-pop in Korea, which has influenced Japan as well, too. If you look at the K-pop stars, the dudes, shall we say, are not Randy Macho Man Savage. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
that's true.
They are.
Yeah, they're effeminate. They look like they look like they wear makeup. And Brad, it's interesting you bring up the fact that the data supports that, because one of the things that I remind men of in the United States, when we talk about the feminization of men and the wussification of men and how limp and beta men have become, I remind men, hey, listen, attractive women that have good personalities, women that are physically attractive, still want real men. So don't get distracted by the fact that there's guys prancing around and wearing foundation and whatever, because attractive women will still want you. They will still seek you out. The data, as you point out, Brad, in Japan and China does not show that that is that is the case in Japan and China, and that is troubling for those folks.
Well, the thing, and once again, I'm the guy that I have said to, I have 3 sons and a daughter. I preach to my daughter and matter of fact, to the point where she would never go on the air and let me talk about this, but I preached to my daughter. I told her every single day of her life that she could do anything she wanted to do, that the days of women being relegated to certain positions were gone, okay? And she went to law school. She graduated from Mizzou and then went to WashU Law School. I don't know if I ever told the story before, but they had when she was a L1 or 1L, whatever they call them, when she was a first year law student, they had an open house. They had a parents' day at the law school, okay? And myself and her mother went and attended, and it was an all-day thing. I'm going, okay, what are we going to do all day long? Well, it was fascinating. I didn't want to leave. It was to the point where we had a couple of the professors, and then in the afternoon, one of the professors came in and gave us the law school treatment like we were the students. And if you ever watched The Paper Chase, he did that kind of a thing. Okay, so for lunch, they told us, we're going to break for lunch, but before we let you go, we're going to pair you off into groups of 10, essentially 5 couples, as terrible as that is, mother, father, and we're going to assign you one of our 3Ls or L3s, one of the third-year law students, and they're going to give you a tour of the law building and tell you about, because they have their relatively, at the time, was relatively new building.
Yeah, beautiful building.
Right. So this young lady, introduces herself, and she takes us around, shows the library and the whole bit, and about 2/3 of the way through the tour, she stops in the hallway. God, I can remember like it happened yesterday. She stops in the hallway, and she says, ladies, I want to directly talk to you. She says, before I was, I knew I was going to do this tour today. So she says, I did a little research. And my daughter graduated, I think my daughter graduated in, if I'm not mistaken, 2014, okay? God, hard to believe 10 years ago. Okay, and so this was like 2011. And she says, I went back to 1964, and at that point in time, that would have been 50 years previous to this day we're there. And she says, the class of 1964 had 3% women and 97% men. And then she goes, the class of 74 had 8% women. I'm just throwing out numbers, but they were close to what she was saying. The class of 74 had 8% women and 92% men. The class of 94 had, it says 64, 74, 84, 84. And every year it kept going up. And then she said, with a smile, she looked at the women, and she says, if the current class that your sons and daughters are a member of right now graduates, it will be the first time in the university history where we will have equal number of men and women as lawyers. Okay? Now,
wow.
And I thought to myself, I am so proud of my daughter because she is leading the way for women generations to come. I'm very pro-female. But the flip side of that is, I heard a guy just recently, once again, another radio show, talk about the fact that, hey, you know what? And he was talking about, sort of like what you and I sort of kid about, but he was being serious. He says, look, there's nothing wrong with calling yourself a man. There's nothing wrong with being a man. And he said, when you're out, and he said, ladies, when you're out driving on that interstate today, guess who built that highway? It was men. He said, when you were in your office building, wherever you were at, guess who built that office building? It was men. And he goes through the whole thing. I'm thinking to myself, I never thought of that. Now, obviously, we have women who are working on the assembly line out at Wentzville, for General Motors. We have women on construction crews. But talk to anybody in the construction business, especially the trades. I can tell you right off the bat, I can make a phone call right now and get Caleb Hunter on the phone from Extreme Electrical. He actively goes out and tries to find women to be electricians. He can't find them because women don't want those jobs for the most part.
Yeah, of course not. And that's their prerogative to say we don't want those jobs.
I get it.
And we didn't go to school because we didn't get a degree in social work because we want to go do HVAC.
But the point of it is that a lot of these jobs, they're going unfilled. The women can make so much more money in those fields than they can in, like, for example, I run a promo on the air. I don't know if you've ever heard it. I use it as Phil. Bart Inman, he's on my station. He's not paying for these ads. I called him up one day and said, Bart, send me those ads. I want to run them. He talks about the fact that when he was a kid, everybody made fun of him, and they said he's not going to accomplish anything in your life. And he went to Rankin Technical, graduated with his HVAC degree in 2 years. He now runs a company where people work for him, and he says in the one ad, if you've heard it before, he says, every day I leave my job, it pays for my house, it pays for my cars, it pays for my business, And I have a tremendously I can't remember his exact words, but he's talking about he has a tremendous satisfaction in the fact that he has built a business, with his hands from the ground up when everybody said he was going to be a failure. And I'm saying there's nothing wrong with working with your hands, dudes and dudettes.
Yeah, but but again, Brad, that's not as glamorous as something where people are going to get on social media and praise you and tell you you're beautiful and give you that kind of affirmation and validation.
Or do dance routines on TikTok, right?
Yeah, like our good nurses do, right, Brad, and our teachers.
We didn't do anything about the SCOTUS or whatever, SOTU or whatever it was last night. Shame on us, right?
Yeah, shame on us, but you know what? There's plenty of time next week. This was a heck of a week. We had a great week, Brad.
And don't forget, before we end, today, it's not a Lenten fish fry day or anything like that. Well, it is, but most importantly, and I understand that there may be a proclamation coming later from the mayor and also from County Executive Page. It's Jason Rosenbaum Friday on 90.7.
Every Friday. What time will he be on?
At noon. No, not every Friday. It's special. Today's a special Friday because they don't have the lady who talks like that. They have Jason Rosenbaum who talks in a voice that you can actually hear when you're driving down the highway. John?
We'll be there. We'll be listening.
Say goodbye.
See you guys on Monday.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?